Robots coming to a warehouse near you. I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Karen Levitt, Chief Marketing Officer at Locus Robotics. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, Tonya. Thanks for having me.
What is Locus Robotics' specialty?
Well, we build robots that assist with fulfilling merchandise in e-commerce warehouses, so that if you purchase something online, what many people don't realize is the raw materials of e-commerce is usually human labor. Somebody has to go and pick something off of a shelf, just as you would do if you were in a retail store. They pick it off the shelf and they pack it in a box and ship it out to you. And we make robots that assist with that process that really help the labor be twice or three times as effective as they are without the robots.
Where are we with the use of warehouse robotics? How many? How widely used?
Well, it depends. Is your name Amazon or not? If you are Amazon, it's more widely used than anywhere else, but even Amazon doesn't have it in all of their warehouses. Amazon bought a robotics company about 6 or 7 years ago, back in 2012, and they are really the only widely used, e-commerce company that has robots at scale at this time. And Locus was developed to counter that movement. If you think about the e-commerce wars, Amazon controls about a third of the U.S. market in e-commerce, which from our perspective means that 2/3 of the market isn't Amazon. And we're essentially an arms dealer to the e-commerce providers that are not Amazon. These are companies that are working very hard to get product out the door to their consumers. And there's a real labor shortage in this space. So what we're doing is we're really helping to bridge the labor gap with the robots. By making the people more effective. We're not replacing people. We're taking the people and making them much more effective and efficient. So essentially, we're creating almost a cyborg environment in the warehouse.
What specific warehouse tasks are best for robots?
Well, we like to think that picking is one of the best tasks. So there's a lot of what's called piece handling that takes place in the warehouse. Instead of, a lot of people I think still may have sort of a romantic notion of old warehouses with large crates sitting on pallets. And you would just use a fork truck and move a whole crate onto a truck and, that took care of it. But today, for e-commerce fulfillment, warehouses perform what's called each picking or piece picking, where the bins are open and people are taking just one or two items out of each bin. That's still a manual process because it requires the dexterity of human fingers. But the robots are great at transporting the merchandise, but they're actually carrying two types of cargo. They're carrying the merchandise itself, but they're also carrying instructions for the workers. So the robot will position itself near where an item needs to be picked, and it will alert a worker that there's a task to be performed, and it will tell the worker exactly what location to pull from, what the item is. It will display a photo of the item, and it's even got a scanner built in. So the worker just needs to pick and swipe, and the robot goes on its way. And before it goes on its way, it also instructs the worker where the next waiting robot is. So the workers are kind of doing traffic control out there as well as carrying merchandise around.
What are some of the concerns human employees have in interacting with the robots? Have you encountered any resistance from workers or unions or anything like that?
Only in our own minds. When we first started to ship, we were very concerned from a marketing perspective that people would be worried about, will robots take my job, or will robots be too complicated? And it's exactly the opposite. We've found that the warehouse workers are loving using the robots for a whole variety of reasons. First of all, it makes their job a lot easier. They're not lugging heavy carts through the warehouse. they're doing much less walking. They're only doing about 40 or 50% of the walking they used to do through the warehouse. Typical non-robot assisted warehouse worker will walk, say, 10 to 15 miles a day. So we're dramatically cutting that. And they get to go home and tell their kids they work with robots. So all of a sudden, mom and dad are cool. So no, we have found that they're loving it. We also recently deployed our gamification UI. So not only is the robot telling the worker where to go, what to do, what to pick, verifying the information, but the robot's also displaying for the worker her particular pick cadence. And if the warehouse has turned on, friendly competition, she can see where she stands against her other peers and pick up the pace, or there can be some fun to be had there too.
That's very interesting, actually, and sounds like a lot of fun. You also mentioned earlier some of the data that the robots have to be aware of. So what role do artificial intelligence, specifically machine learning and the data it's collecting, and then AI play in the warehouse robotics?
Obviously quite a bit. The first thing that happens is the robots all need to know what the warehouse looks like, and they're equipped with an assortment of sensors. We're really drafting off of the self-driving car world. So the automotive industry has been great at advancing the interest of sensors, whether they're lasers or cameras or tactile sensors. But the first thing we do whenever we go into a warehouse is we send in one robot to map the space, sort of, the Sacagawea bot. And that robot will create a robot picture which resides on the server, and then any new robot that's introduced into that space will be aware of the map. But as the robots go through their day, the warehouse is a really dynamically changing environment. And anytime a robot anywhere sees something, that perception is made known to all of the other robots. So think of it like Waze for warehouses. You're driving along the highway, you get a little alert at exit 42, there's a police car, and the next 500 cars that pass that point confirm the presence of the police car. And eventually, Waze will say, that's not a transient police car, that's a speed trap. And the robots do a similar thing in the warehouse. If they turn a corner and they encounter something that hasn't been there before, maybe somebody dropped a pallet at the end of an aisle, then the robot will say, there's something new here. And then each subsequent robot that passes that location will confirm it, until eventually the robots will upgrade their perception of the space to indicate that there's been a change to the infrastructure. So they're constantly doing that and alerting one another about the changes in the environment.
You said earlier that warehouse robotics is still in its infancy. What invention or innovation is it going to take to create that next leap forward?
Well, I think we're pretty close to being there. I've seen a tremendous acceleration in the acceptance of these in just the last couple of years. To me, I liken this to the adoption of the PC in the early 80s. It's a very rapidly evolving adoption curve here. A couple of years ago, we would show our robots at various industry events, and people say, robots, that's cute. And now we see them coming up saying, I've got to get myself a robot, and now I just have to find the right one. So what we've got is, I think what's interesting about robots in warehouses is the warehouse industry is a metrics-driven business. So for them, it's important to understand the key performance metrics that drive their business. That's typically measured in the rate at which people pick units per hour, lines per hour, lines per day. And when they see that it goes from, say, 75 units per hour from an average worker to 150 or 160 units per hour, that's the proof point that they're looking for. And we've been able to prove that out, and our customers are really seeing great results. So we've just come through a terrific peak season. And now I think what we're seeing is something that I think is going to be critical in advancing this further first of all, the acceptance by customers in a highly competitive business. But I think what we're seeing now in this wave of robots, which really distinguishes them from, I mentioned Amazon quite a bit early on. What really distinguishes these from the robots that Amazon uses is that they're tremendously flexible. So we have customers who have, a certain number of robots year round, and for peak season, we goose them up 30%, 40% in their robot population for just a period of 2 or 3 months. And then we take the robots back and they drop down to their regular steady state levels. And that's really critical in an industry that's growing as fast as the e-commerce business continues to be. For them to know that their solution can be as nimble as their business needs is pretty critical.
Karen Levitt, Chief Marketing Officer at Locust Robotics. Very interesting stuff. If somebody wants to find out how to get robotics into their warehouse, or maybe they just want to connect with you personally, how can they do that?
Well, they can certainly come to www.locustrobotics.com. We're out there on Twitter too, but I think just coming to the website, there are a lot of great videos. You can see robots at scale working in real customer warehouses, and we've got customers on there talking about what it's done to transform their businesses.
Sounds good. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.